If we look back at our lives, some of the most horrific things that we've gone through can be the most growth producing. So it's interesting how things unfold. And if we can hold that, again, at the end of the day, I think when we leave this planet, two questions I think that we'll ask ourselves really from a higher perspective is how much did we learn and how much did we love?
Hello, I'm Tessa Lynn Alburn. Welcome to the Say Yes to Your Soul podcast, where we empower women to connect with their souls and shine in their business. If you are ready to embrace your brilliance, create meaningful connections, and be compensated for your specific gifts, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore inspiring stories, practical insights, unique points of view, and soulful strategies, all to help you thrive. So let's dive on into this transformative journey together. Tune in and say yes to your soul. Hello, hello, hello. It is my deepest pleasure and honor to introduce a friend of mine, someone I met in Sedona years ago. His name is Dennis Harness, and he has a doctorate in counseling psychology, and he is a professional astrologer. I think you're going to really love this conversation today. For more than 30 years, Dennis has studied both Eastern and Western techniques of astrology, and he teaches workshops on Vedic astrology, that's VEDIC if you don't know, and transpersonal psychology throughout the world. Dr. Harness is the president emeritus of the American College of Vedic Astrology in Sedona, Arizona, and he's the primary organizer of the annual Sedona Vedic Astrology Conferences. And he's working on his memoir right now. It's called The Karmic Code, Planetary Cycles of the Soul. How perfect is that? Dennis, I want to give you a big warm welcome to Say Yes to Your Soul.
Oh, Tess, it's so great to see your lovely face.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to reconnect in this way. We've been trying to do this for a while, and the stars did not align. So they have today, and I'm just really happy about that.
We had to get through those eclipses.
Yes. And I think, people are still feeling a lot of the effects from those eclipses. And I don't know if you want to touch on that at all today, but I definitely want to give you an opportunity to share your journey. I mean, it's so different from what everybody else was doing in astrology. So why don't you go ahead and take things from there, share a little bit, maybe it's something you're working on in your memoir, but how you actually got started in astrology and in particular in India.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of three things happened for me. One was when I was 12, I was really drawn to astrology. I was memorizing the sun signs, Western astrology. And my teacher, Yogananda, said, sometimes whatever you're drawn to as a teenager, young teenager, will give you a clue to what maybe your soul really wants to do. And then later, around 20, I had my first astrology session. And it's kind of scary. He told me, be careful, I could end up in jail.
What?
I was driving to Stockton, California from the Midwest. And so I was like, whoa, okay. Anyway, Stockton's a little bit of a jail place if you've never been to Stockton, California. But anyway, the first job I got there was working at a juvenile hall with kids, and I would be literally locked in for like 18 hours a day. So I always felt that sometimes if I'd do a double shift, So sometimes I felt that that was how I played out that karma. That maybe, instead of going to jail or prison or whatever, I just had to do that work. So anyway.
That is really interesting. Like I never would have thought about that sort of application. You knew some of your karma and you were like, well, I happen to be doing this thing with juveniles in jail. And you had kept an awareness not to get yourself put behind the bars.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Okay. So what happened next? There you are. You're working with juveniles. How did you make that leap from Stockton, California to India?
So what happened a few years later, I continued to study Western astrology, but a few years later in 1980, I was at a yoga teacher's training program for 3 months up in Nevada City, California. And the director, the guy that created it, Swami Kriyananda, who was a direct disciple of Yogananda, he told me, you should get a reading by this astrologer down in Santa Monica named Chakrapani. And I didn't even realize there was a different systems. And I went and scheduled this session. It was a lot of money, $75. back in 1980, that was a lot of money. But anyway,
That was a lot of money. Yes.
I went to see him. He was Swami Muktananda's astrologer, And so anyway, he just read me like a book. It was really strange. I was 24 at the time. I think the first thing he said to me within a minute or so is, "You'll be married twice." And I hadn't even been engaged once, so that was a little disconcerting. But he told me some other things that were really more, how would we say, a little more.
Well, okay, I'm going to interrupt here because Dennis, one of the things that you said to me in my session with you was that I had missed a bullet with my engagement. Right? So like that big stuff shows up in this Vedic astrology. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had this session. What did you walk away with? Like, what was the thing that really touched your heart and made you start following that path?
I just felt really seen, It's kind of like a guru. A true guru is like a flawless mirror. They mirror back and it was like he was mirroring back my challenges, but also my divinity as well. And there was something, I think he even said something about being a professional astrologer. Oh, I know the other thing that was really cool. He told me that I could move a lot, could change residence, and it was very disruptive. And the truth is, at that point in time, I was moving every year. So what ended up happening when we moved here to Sedona, we found a house. This was back in 94, so it's 30 years ago. We've lived in the same house for 30 years because he said the trick is every 6 months, rearrange the furniture in your house and it'll feel like you moved. That was his. So Laura does that all the time. My wife's always rearranging furniture or adding on to the house or whatever. So anyway.
Well, that kind of fits with the other example that you gave. Instead of getting behind bars, instead of moving, right? Those things are similar. You're addressing the karma in a real way and moving the energy out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Okay. So I can picture Laura. Laura moved the furniture, not you and Laura. Okay.
Added 500 square foot onto the house and put a new kitchen, over the years. So it always felt a little bit like that. But I always remembered what he said. Yeah. So what happened about 5 or 6 years ago, we did try to move, and it was very destabilizing for me emotionally, a lot of levels. It was really shook me to the core. So we just did not move. Actually, we moved back. We did move for a little while. We were renting a place. But anyway, long story short, we had our house up for sale and we decided to move back to Sedona. And we've been here, 30 years, except for that little segment there. So he was absolutely right. It was very destabilizing for me to try to change houses,
So when you were like in your 20s and your 30s and you were trying to be stable in your home life, you were probably also going through some other challenges. Were there any, please feel free to share some of those challenges that you were going through and how you worked with your consciousness to overcome those.
Well, as I started practicing astrology professionally back in 1988, I was a professor at a college in San Francisco, and I was a behavioral medicine therapist. I worked with chronic pain with people with headache and TMJ. So anyway, I was still doing my astrology on the side while I was working as this assistant professor. And so I had to keep it kind of hidden, or at least I thought I did, because I was in this traditional world, this traditional college, and astrology just really wasn't accepted very much back then. in terms of academia. It still has its challenges. So I had to stay underground. So I became a closet astrologer, had to stay in the closet. So that was one thing that was a little disconcerting. But one of my friends, one of my colleagues, one of the other professors, he said, the truth is, Dennis, said, people don't really care. I mean, what he was saying was, you're getting all worked up about it, and other people would just whatever, because they got their own life to deal with. So they probably wouldn't even bother.
Right. So your own mind was the one making up the stories about, it not being a good thing.
So it was, my problem was studying astrology of India is there weren't a lot of books written about it, except in India. And so I did just a little bit before I started practicing professionally in 1987, I came across a book called Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer. And it was like a bridge for me from Western into Vedic. And then within a year or two, I was practicing both. Really, I used both when I would look at charts. And still to this day, when I look at a chart from India, I think of the Western chart as well. So I'm kind of what I call bilingual. I'm using, in a way, both systems, even though my specialty is the astrology of India.
I like that. Yeah. So you really found a way to, because that was your journey, and you learned Vedic astrology by having that book that helped you bridge the gap. That became actually what I would call in business, like for coaches and entrepreneurs, it's like a secret sauce that you had. It is a specialty, and then that has led you on. You've done all kinds of things. You're connected to astrologers all over the world, and putting on events and doing all kinds of things. I'd love to know, like, what are some of the breakthroughs that people have when they work with you, like things that have, some of your clients maybe that have changed, it's changed their lives to be able to help them with the Vedic and the Western?
Yeah. Well, one of the techniques I use, which is actually works with whether you're using Western or Vedic, is astrocartography. And what that is taking your chart and putting it on a map of the world. So it literally gives you ley lines. So for example, two women came in for sessions and they had just gotten back from Bali, from Indonesia. And the one woman I was looking at her astrocartography, and she had this beautiful Venus line running through there. And the other woman had like a Saturn line going through Bali. So as I was talking to them, the Venus woman absolutely loved it. The Saturn woman absolutely hated it. And so I was joking. I said to her, I said, I could have saved you a lot of money, So it's kind of like look before you leap, kind of thing. So what I do for clients is I have them normally send me like 5 geographic areas of interest. And then I'll see what's going on in those different areas, as well as what astrological weather fronts are moving through there as well. So it's kind of 2 different techniques. So anyway, the point is it can help people with location.
Yes.
Like real estate, location, location, location. And if you can find more your place under the sun, so much the better. I'll give you an example again. My Jupiter line goes right through Arizona, which is a very favorable line. And my wife's Mercury line goes right through here. And we've been here 30 years, same house as I mentioned. This office we've had for 28 years, and he's never raised the rent in 28 years.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, he could be charging us quadruple what we pay. So anyway, there's this kind of good karma that we have here in Arizona. And so it works that way. And sometimes the lines can come to you through, say, like you have really good lines in India. And I do have, for example, it's like that culture came to me, even though I've been there 6 times. When I first looked at astrocartography, I noticed I had a Jupiter line going through India as well, which is Jupiter means guru line. And my teachers were from this particular part of India where that Jupiter line was very close. So even before I went there, which I did in 87, I was introduced to Yogananda's teachings back in 76. So you see what I mean? It was coming to me, even though I had never visited there before. So it's an interesting technique. So I do that. And sometimes, again, I'm real strong about ethics. And so, because I'm a psychologist by training, but don't hold that against me. Just easy. Okay. So anyway, I call it the 3Ds. I don't predict death, divorce, or disease, because to me, those are in God and Goddess's hands. And sometimes, you'll see death in the chart, and it could be the death of a pet or something. It doesn't necessarily mean it's that person, or they may go through a death rebirth experience. So I'm really careful how I word things to clients. But let's just say if I see some really difficult aspects between two charts for compatibility, for example, for relationship compatibility, and it doesn't look so great, what I will say, rather than you shouldn't be together, or you shouldn't get married or whatever, is I say, I think it's really good in your charts to go slow and steady, and not jump too quickly, into marriage. Maybe have a longer engagement, because you're going into better cycles, maybe coming up in a year or so. So again, I try to give a warning, but in a way that's still empowering, doesn't take people's free will and choice away from them. So to me,
Yes.
astrology is helping us to take discriminative action in our life. That's the keynote.
I love that. So one still has free will with astrology, and there's sort of like this design of possibilities, but then with free will, you can work within that, and then you can probably, the way I think about it, is create new possibilities from that original design.
Correct. A good example of that was Yogananda, when he was a teenager, was predicted by the local astrologer, not his guru, the local astrologer, that he would be married 3 times and twice a widower. He'd be married 3 times and twice a widower. So he took his chart, he watered it up, and he threw it into a fire. And he said, the seeds of my past karma can blossom or grow in the fires of divine wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
on 3 different occasions, though, Tessa, his family tried to get him married to 3 different women, and he refused. So the karma came, but he was able to circumvent it because he wanted to be married to Divine Mother.
So he went to the higher vibration of divine energy rather than feeling like he could fight his way through these marriages or fight everybody on these things. He just elevated himself because he saw a greater possibility, and he knew he had free will.
Yeah, he would have suffered from and his chart really reflects that. He would have suffered from what I call the 3 rings of marriage: the engagement ring, the wedding ring, and then the suffer ring. Okay.
Ooh, ouch. Okay. Ladies, don't get too worried about that one. Okay.
No, that's a really difficult karma early on. And again, I only use that joke. I only use that joke when the person's already gone through a divorce.
Okay. Fair enough.
And then most really relate to that.
So, Dennis, you, as an astrologer, you provide this service for people, and with your psychology background, and you really care about the people that you work with. There's still a body of work that you're doing in your life that you're striving for. Could you share a little bit about your own spiritual soul work that you are intending, that you live into? Maybe it's the daily stuff that you're doing. What would you like to share with our listeners today?
Well, I think working on this memoir, which has been a work in progress, honestly, for a few years, it's a trilogy, and it's a lot when you do I think of it like doing a life review. So it's very powerful. The whole concept of journaling can be very, very powerful for psychological change and just reviewing things and seeing what lessons you can learn from the past as well. So But that's been a big focus for me, is to work on that memoir, because I consider it kind of like, how would we say, like an opus of my life, that it's
Mm.
something that needs to be fulfilled before I leave this planet. Because I did do the conferences for 30 years, put on conferences for 30 years. And actually, I just retired from doing that. One of the reasons is so I could work more on the memoir, but the other reason is that because of COVID, it just became too crazy. you know,
Oh, yes, I remember that. Yeah. So your method right now is working on your memoir, which is a lot like journaling. And in your journaling, your memoir, getting all those stories out and sharing those lessons. Earlier in our conversation, had talked about, I think the phrase was patterns of destiny and how you navigate those. What are some of the things that you're noticing now as you're journaling your memoir?
that again, that there are these, I call them, I like to use the word destiny rather than fate. And there are these patterns of destiny that are coming through, but how we navigate with them, what kind of choices we make, is part of the whole equation. And the other thing, which we forget a lot, is that we can't just do it from an ego playing level, as one of my teachers calls it, the me-go. It likes to run the show, because there is the divine grace that's coming into play, that we can, if we open to it, that can be a big quality that comes into our life in addition to our own effort. So it's kind of like effort and grace. But the effort, again, it's tricky, because sometimes when you effort so much, you get caught up so much in the ego, it doesn't allow the divine energy to come through, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious for you, like how would you notice if you were getting caught up in the ego amigo?
I would be suffering usually.
Suffering. Yeah. So
Yeah, no, but that's a good question. Let me think about that for a sec. Hmm. I would say just a feeling of contraction, or sometimes even exhaustion, or just feeling like, how it is when you're just not in the flow, you know, and you keep running into obstacles all day because you're trying to hurry and scurry and run the show, and just sometimes it just backfires to be in that state of consciousness. So I think, to work towards which is hard for me, being a fiery type entity, pitta, as they would say in Ayurveda, is to try to strive actually, strive is not a good word. That's probably why I get into trouble.
that's the hurry scurry. Yeah.
I try to connect with perfect, brilliant stillness.
Ooh, repeat that, please.
Perfect, brilliant stillness. And if you're in that state, then things can come to you more readily. And then you start, even if you're not fully perfect, you're just into the stillness. Things start coming, like synchronistic events just start happening. So sometimes left and right, it's just amazing when you're in the flow and you're talking about something, and then you meet a person within 10 or 15 minutes that's also talking about that, or just different, how it works. It's just sometimes these synchronistic events are kind of showing us that we're maybe going on the right path. And that when we run into obstacles left and right, then maybe it's telling us something. The deity Ganesh, the elephant-headed god, which
Yes.
everybody, thinks of him, as removing obstacles, which is true. But he also puts obstacles in our way so we don't go down roads that aren't good for us. So he kind of is a gatekeeper in that way. If we tap into his energetic, that's what he's trying to do, is to make our lives more joyful, more smooth, and not have
Yeah,
negative.
he's a little bit of a bedeviler, isn't he?
When you're interested, he's one of those more user-friendly gods, though. He's much more user-friendly than, say, Kali.
Yes.
be a little tougher to work with.
For sure. Yeah, Ganesh is, just the image of Ganesh is like joyful, right?
Right. At a elephant Buddha or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And then like thinking about if Ganesh is providing some obstacles to like just do it with a little bit of humor in our hearts, like it's going to be okay. We're all here to learn and grow. I love what you said a few minutes ago about divine grace, though. Like there's some efforting, but divine grace is there. But it's like somehow we have to be open to it. What's one of the ways that you cause yourself to shift into that openness of receiving divine grace, Dennis?
Well, one of my teachers, again, who's on the other side, Paramahansa Yogananda, he said, actually, it ties into our conversation too. He said fate and free will, particularly free will, he said, was due to the fact that each moment to moment, we can allow the divine light to enter in, or we can block it. And that we have that choice moment to moment to open to this, we could say higher power, or continue to run the show and suffer. So it's tricky because, we don't want to give up our effort and what we're bringing to the table, but at the same time, I think it's probably better to lean into the grace part of the equation. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I'm with you on that 100%. So I had asked you earlier about like one thing that you would love for people to come away with today, and I love what you shared with me. Would you share that with our listeners?
Oh yeah, that
Yes.
quote from Sri Yukteswar, who is Yogananda's guru. He's from India. They're both from India. And Sri Yukteswar, it's a beautiful chapter, actually, an autobiography of a yogi called Outwitting the Stars. It's actually chapter 16, and it's all about astrology and fate, free will, destiny. And he said it very eloquently. He said, a child is born at that moment in time that's in mathematical harmony with that soul's karma. It reflects one's unalterable past, but probable future results, and underline probable, because he went on to say the message blazoned across the heavens at the moment of birth was not meant to emphasize fate, but was to arouse the soul from slumber, or to awaken the soul into action. So again, we have we do have free will in terms of how we respond to things in life and how we work with it, how we reframe things. Because if we look back at our life, some of the most horrific things that we've gone through can be the most growth producing. So it's interesting how things unfold. And if we can hold that, again, at the end of the day, I think when we leave this planet, two questions I think that we'll ask ourselves really from a higher perspective is how much did we learn and how much did we love? And so again, I just want to leave people with the sense that even though the charts can be really helpful to work with as a kind of a map quest to God, so to speak, or goddess, map quest to God or goddess. But at the same time, again, we have to exert our free will. And so again, the keynote for good astrology is helping us to take discriminative action in our life. So it's just kind of like how would you say? Well, it's like a good life coach, that's helping you to navigate more successfully. It's like you could walk to New York City, or you could drive a car or bus or a train, or you could fly there. So you have a choice how you want to get to New York, And so sometimes certain things in our life, of course, help us to carry us along if we're open to that divine light coming in to help us.
Yes, indeed. And you've touched on the concept of choice a number of times in our talk today. And absolutely. So making those choices while connected to divinity is often in our best interest on all levels to do that. But we can choose any experience we want to have and still learn from those. But I love those two questions together. How much did we learn? And how much did we love? Just right there, those two questions could transport of soul light years if reflected upon daily over time.
Yeah, I had an out of near death experience back in 2007, and the part of it was I was taken into a room, and it was like a life review thing, like a video, but showing but in maybe in clock time it was 10 or 15 minutes, but it went through my life events, pointing out the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, the bad and the ugly was just how I missed the mark. Maybe I hurt somebody's feelings or made a difficult choice or whatever, and at the end of the day, it's a lot about self-forgiveness, because we've done it all. And if you believe in reincarnation, we've done it really all in past lives. We've done everything you can imagine. So at the end of the day, it's also about self-love and self-forgiveness and also, I think letting go of blaming people. I call it the blame game. And, it's just, there's actually some ways one of my yoga teachers, really involved lady, said to me, it was like a Zen koan. She said, if there is no blame, there's no need for forgiveness.
Exactly. That's so brilliant. Yes.
I said, so with that one for a while, I go, yeah, I think I could see different sides of that one. But, again, we get all caught up in this thing where we have to ask the person for forgiveness for what they've done. It's not that can't be good and helpful. But at the end of the day, if we're not blaming them, we don't even need to ask for forgiveness. It's just happened and, let it go, learn from it and move on.
Yeah, moving into a greater acceptance of anything that's happening while we still effort. I think of it like efforting to be better, to be closer to oneness, to being closer to my high self.
Yeah. And the other thing about astrology is that you could use an analogy. It's like you're going out on a boat on the ocean, and there's a weather report of these turbulent waves coming in and a lot of wind. And so you have the choice to leave the sail up or bring the sail down. And that's your free will in that moment to take discriminative action. And then you may not be buffeted around so much. So the other analogy I love to share is you're going down a road at 80 miles an hour and there's a pothole in the road. Your free will is to waken and put your foot on the brake. And then you may hit that pothole at 10 miles an hour rather than 80. Or you may be able to circumvent the pothole totally, like Yogananda did. He didn't get married, He saw the 3 potholes in the road and just said, no, not going there. So anyway, the idea is the more that you're awake, in a way, your soul is awakened from slumber, because it's always there actually. But, let's just say we help it to awaken so that our ego can tap into it more readily. That again, I think is a big, big part of it. There's actually a beautiful movie called Awake, The Life of Yogananda.
Oh, yes.
2015, I think it won Best Documentary Film.
I think that's right. Yes.
On Netflix. Anyway, it's a beautiful movie about the life of Yogananda. And his whole point is that to awaken, kind of awaken from this dream state that we're in here. Because this is like a dream on one level, a Maya. On another level, it is happening too. So, it's kind of it's a paradox in a way.
It's a waking dream in a way. Yes, exactly. And definitely a paradox. Oh, Dennis, this is great. I really love how you've woven in here the awakening from slumber, the pieces of consciousness. It's like astrology is so much more than just like finding out what your personality is like. There's just many, many deep layers to it. And I thank you for being a student of it and for being so dedicated and ethical. And I know that you have a gift for our listeners. So would you like to tell them about that?
Yeah, I was thinking about what I could give. And what I thought I would do is when I do a session, initial session for someone, it's called natal chart analysis. It's usually like an hour and 15-minute session. And again, I charge $295. I've been doing this for 35 years, so I'm professional, as you mentioned, astrologer and psychologist. But what I thought I would do for your listeners, if they just mentioned that they were on your show or that listening to your show, that I would give them $100 off initial session, so that it would only be $195 rather than $295. And they could just go on my website, dennisharness.com, and see if they resonate with me. There's some video and some articles I've written. And I feel that, again, when client comes in, that we have this connection of the Egyptian proverb I love is, there are no coincidences, only appointments. So you know what I'm saying? So I always tell my clients, okay, we had this appointment. So we're supposed to
Did the
meet.
Egyptians actually say that? That's really funny.
And then they also said, trust in God or goddess, but tie your camel to the post.
That sounds really Egyptian for sure. There are no coincidences, only appointments. I really like that. That's kind of cool. I think I'm going to play with that one. I'm going to put that on a Post-it or two and meditate on it. Dennis, thank you for bringing your humor, your stories, your being to and for being the first man guest on Say Yes to Your Soul. And for that beautiful offer that's like almost 30%. That is more than 30% off, actually, just a little bit more. So just let Dennis know if you want to connect with Dennis, go to his website, read his articles, check out a video or two. Don't worry if some of them are like for becoming an astrologer. He's amazing. I've had wonderful readings with you. We call it a reading, but whatever, sessions. It's more than a reading, I would say. And your guidance has helped me in my life. And so I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for being here today and sharing with the Say Yes to Your Soul audience.
Oh, and I feel so honored that I'm the first male, That's so cool.
It is cool.
I do like to cross stare someone once in a while. No, just kidding. All right, don't tell my wife.
No. Say hi to her for me, by the way. We share some things on our charts the same, which is really fun. That was fun to learn. And anyway, okay, I digress. Ladies, I wish that you come into greater empowerment through your choices and continue to awaken your soul from whatever level slumber she's in. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye for now, and I'll see you soon.
All right. If you're hearing this message, you have listened to our newest Say Yes to Your Soul episode all the way to the end. And for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I invite you to stay updated with me, and the best way to do that is to sign up for my free gift, 3 Steps for How to Reignite Your Soul Fire. And you can get that at tessafreegift.com. tessafreegift.com, or just go to the podcast website, sayyestoyoursoulpodcast.com, and that's where we have all the episodes and more. I wish you an amazing day.